Just a couple of rambling thoughts on culture. I think what's often overlooked is that culture is kind of the water that we're swimming in, the atmosphere that we are breathing. If we define culture extremely broadly as basically everything that surrounds us and everything that flows through us, so we include architecture, we include news, we include everything we read, everything we see, everything we hear, the music we listen to, every kind of surrounding of all our five senses, every type of communication flow. If we define all of this, so very, very broadly, as culture, then we are all cultural creations. We are all constantly influenced by our culture. If you grow up in a certain city, the architecture of that city will influence you. The language that you grow up in will influence you and form you. The presuppositions of your village, of your city, of your region, of your country, what is generally valued, what is seen as true, what is seen as important, what is seen as an implicit rule of behavior will form who you are becoming and will also, to a certain extent, unconsciously determine what you regard as real and what you regard as possible. So, if we want to become the best versions of ourselves, if we want to become better human beings, better members of our communities, maybe, if that's your aspiration, better world citizens, then it is a good idea to pay attention to the culture or the cultures that inform us, that flow through us, that influence us, that make us who we are, that are like the filters through which we see ourselves, other people, and the world. And one of the best ways to become conscious of our culture is to travel to other countries and to live in other countries. Like I have lived for a year in the States, actually for more than a year. I did a high school year in the States. I lived 3 months in Los Angeles. I did like a road trip in the States. I lived most of my life in London, but I grew up in Germany. And the last couple of years, I have increasingly lived here in Italy, in Venice. And all these different environments had different influences on me, made certain things possible. So really, when I went to high school in the US, I was 15, and before I had mainly lived in Germany. And yes, I've been on holiday a bit in Italy or in Spain or something, but I hadn't seen a really different culture like the American one. So when I lived at the tender age of 15, 16 in Minnesota, in the States, I got a different perspective on my own culture. I saw Germany with its strengths and also with its limitations, which before I wasn't able to see. And then I saw the strengths, but also limitations of the US. Then when I moved to London, again, I gained different perspectives on Germany, different perspectives on the States. When I moved here to Venice, I gained different perspectives on London and on Germany and on the States. And now I'm planning to travel to more other countries, like for instance, in the last year, 2 years ago, I've been to Armenia a couple of times. Again, this changed my perspective, transformed how I view certain things about the world, about myself, how I relate to other people, how I relate to myself, what I think is possible, what I think is normal, if normal exists. So if you travel and you really engage with the culture, if you're not just the typical tourist who takes things in and doesn't let him or herself be changed, well, then that won't do much. But if you really go travel, go live maybe a bit longer in a certain country, in a certain city, it doesn't have to be years, but like instead of doing the usual city trip of like 3 days, live in a city for like 4 weeks. I lived a couple of weeks in Rome, a couple of weeks in Florence. And again, these cities do something different to me than Venice does, or London does, or New York does. And it's very expanding to learn from, to soak in, consciously soak in the cultural atmosphere of a city for longer than just the typical touristy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. So try that if you want to expand yourself. Pick a city and try to make it possible to live there for at least 4 weeks and really soak up what's different there, how people view the world differently, how they live differently, how their way of being is differently, what they think is possible, what is normal, what is important is different. And that way you can learn to see more clearly how you have been formed and influenced. And so you become more flexible, more expansive, you widen your horizons. And the same goes not just for travel, that's just one example, but if you are steeped in a certain type of information, like if you read certain things, like if you only read self-help, or if you only read books about art, or predominantly books about art, and never read books about science, expand your horizons, expose yourself to a different culture. If you usually read American novels, read Peruvian novels, read French novels, read German novels, read Japanese novels. Like, expand your horizons into different cultures by reading, into different disciplines by reading. Watch documentaries on something you're usually not super interested in. So if you usually only watch art documentaries, start watching some science documentaries, start watching literature documentaries, start watching travel documentaries, whatever. So even through that, if you're not traveling, but by exposing yourself to different types of culture, to different types of cultural influence, you can expand your horizon and you can learn to change implicitly or explicitly just by exposing yourself to those different perspectives or different worldviews, whatever you may call it. So think of culture not as decoration. Think of culture as the invisible architecture of you, not something separate from yourself. It's the ether you swim in. It's the ether that you are. So if you are a drop in the ocean, you are also the ocean. So you are a drop in a culture, so you are also that culture. You're not separated from the outside. That outside, that architecture you walk through every day, is inside you, forms how you think, how you feel, what you do, what you're able to do. So pay attention to how you're not separate from culture, how culture is you, how you are part of culture. And just paying attention to that and consciously expanding your horizons into different cultures and different disciplines will do a lot for your personal development, will do a lot for your psychology, will even do a lot for your mental health and your physical health. So, what are you going to do to expose yourself to different disciplines and cultures in the next few days? What's your cultural experiment that you're going to try in the next few days?